everybody. I'm very excited that today we've got Krishnan Doyle, the Managing Director of Core Recruitment, to talk to us all things leadership and where the greatest opportunities are for hospitality people going into 2022. Krishnan, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Very welcome, Rob. How are you?
Very well, very well. Better now, better every week that goes by now, thankfully, after the year we've all had.
I've got to say, this is a bit weird. I'm used to being on the other side of webinars. And then when people have got to interview me, I'm like, what do I say? What do I do? What's going on in the industry? So be gentle with me.
Well, I suspect actually lots of people know you because Core has done so much through the crisis. But I think that the perspective you have on where the emerging opportunities are for hospitality people, the skills that we all need to be developing it's a hot topic for a lot of folks. I think a lot of folks are tired after the last year, but also hopefully beginning to be excited as they see green shoots coming through. So don't do yourself down. Like, you've got a lot to say. You probably know more about this than anyone. So should we dive straight in? You have just published an article on key positions, key skills.
Yep.
I'd love it if we could just break that down, and I'll also make sure that we share the link for that for folks that are watching, for them to follow up in detail afterwards. So what's the key sort of point of the key positions article?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just about kind of like outlining its specific segments that we have found that there's been massive growth within, and also where the market has kind of maybe changed a little bit as well. I think in normal times, if you almost think about it like an escalator, that people are constantly developing their skills, they're constantly evolving, they're constantly changing. And I think what basically happened with the pandemic is that people got in an elevator and just kind of went up. And unfortunately, it just means that there's this whole group of people who either weren't reskilling themselves as they went, or the lack of skill, or the market just shifted so significantly. And the bit specifically that I talk about with that is digital marketing. It's like we used to do so much kind of traditional, like, marketing in terms of in-unit marketing, the normal kind of like side of things. And now it's kind of like, if you're not kind of like completely up to speed with all of your paper advertising, your performance marketing, your like all of that kind of like online side of things, then you're really missing a complete trick. And there's been this kind of slight gulf of people who have just been lost in that, unfortunately, who either need to reskill or find organizations where that digital piece isn't as important. And I think the reason for putting together that article was actually to kind of say, like, these are the areas that have really changed within the segment, and these are some of the other areas which have kind of like maybe kind of like stayed a little bit of the same. So for example, like HR, 2 years ago, there were all these articles out there about HR, and is HR still relevant? Should HR have a seat at the table? And there were all of these kind of like entrepreneurs running around saying HR is a pain, HR is a pain, HR is a pain. And now, like literally every single organization, if they don't have one already, they should have somebody sitting at board level within their organizations who have HR representation, making sure that the employee's voice is being heard at all levels of the organization. Employee well-being is such a massive thing for people now. And these, although it's horrible the way that it's come about, these are great things for employees moving forward. And hopefully we're all going to have kind of like better work-life balance, and we're all going to have kind of like a much more adjusted working style kind of after this has kind of happened.
When you are asked to find a people leader that's capable of operating at board level, what does that look like for you? Does that mean they've already operated at board level? What about somebody that hasn't operated at board level but you think plausibly could? What characteristics and experiences would they have?
Well, the thing is, like, I mean, you can always give somebody a good interview, right? I'm not going to go into a whole kind of like, interview process and all of that kind of stuff, but Core's divided into two separate parts. So there's an executive recruitment team, and then there's a contingency recruitment team. And one of the questions we're constantly asking our execs is, who are the upcoming people that you think of within the sector in terms of that next level of talent that's coming through? And one of the questions that we're constantly asking kind of like the general managers, the head chefs, the area managers is kind of, who in your business kind of like really inspires you? And it's always kind of like that way that kind of like, because in an interview, everybody's like, yeah, I'm the best person. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing the next thing. Because you're going for a CEO job, because obviously you're going to say that. But actually, when you hear it from the people that they're actually managing, then you think, actually, that person is amazing. Actually, that person is great. So it's kind of like, so as well as doing the interviewing side of things, we get a lot of information from companies about who those genuine leaders actually are. And I don't think people are waking up in the morning kind of thinking, I'm going to deceive the world about like who I am or what my working style is, but each organization has a different culture and each person has a different management style, and our job is about trying to match that together in kind of like a good way.
That's super interesting. So you've got this sort of your little birds everywhere chirping back around where the talent is arising. And am I right? I don't want to put words in your mouth. So it sounds like you're constantly looking for references of positive outcomes. So people that have driven organizations, made people feel great. And then do you dive in and say, well, how has that person earned those great character references? And so then you can start to place what their personal style is and try and match that with an organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. For example, within some of the big retail groups that we work in, it's very fast-paced. It's very lean. It's very do more with less. It's that style of organization, and there maybe you need a harder style individual and a harder style kind of like type of senior manager. But within kind of like some of the 5-star hotel luxury groups that we work with within central London, it's more about employee experience. It's more about engagement. There's more money in the pot to do things with kind of like people. And therefore it's a very different kind of like style. So those are two quite extreme examples of some of the work that we do, but I think it kind of gives a little bit of color as to kind of like, what we're looking for and what would actually suit people. And the other reason that people come to us as well is, yes, we started off as a hospitality specialist 15 plus years ago. It's my birthday today, so I'm a little bit worried about what age I am now. But anyway, but when we started off, and we did a diversification 5 years into the agency where we tracked where our top candidates were going, and we noticed they were going into retail, they were going into property, and they were going into leisure. So now, we'll work with everybody from David Lloyd to CBRE to B&M retail to Asda, all of that kind of side of things. So the nice thing is now that when clients come to us, it's kind of we don't just need to put people forward to them who work from hospitality backgrounds or work from their competitor organizations. It's also about scanning the whole market and being able to say, well, actually, here's some people that you wouldn't have thought of, or you wouldn't have bumped into in an event, or you might not know from your own kind of personal network. And that's kind of where you can really kind of add some value. I think the thing that we did that was quite lucky was about a year before the pandemic, we actually diversified our marketing team to doing insights like performance marketing, digital marketing, all of that side of things. And we also started a technology team as well. So now we're recruiting for kind of Ruby on the Rails specialists. We're recruiting for front stack developers, front end developers, back end developers, all of that kind of side of things as well. And our clients, one of the most interesting parts to the pandemic is our clients coming to us and saying, right, we need to recruit an e-commerce director. What do they do? How much do we pay them? How do I manage this person? And it's been really interesting kind of sitting with kind of MDs and CEOs and kind of saying, well, this is the key performance indicators. This is what good looks like. This is the way that things should be adapting. And I think that that's another kind of trend that we've seen coming up is people recruiting for positions that they've never had before within their organization, what that looks like, what the interview process looks like, what good looks like, culturally, what's actually going to work. And I guess also then ongoing, once that person is into the business, how you actually manage them and what kind of and how that should be working moving forward. So it's been quite interesting that you still get phone calls kind of saying, right, so-and-so 6 months review coming up. What do you think they should have achieved by now? And you're a bit oh, well, it's kind of down to your company objectives, but it helps you to integrate together kind of much more with your client, which is great.
There are clearly so many opportunities, and I can't wait to get into some of those functional areas. So on the people leadership point, it sounds like your advice there is walk the walk, earn amazing references from above and below in the organizational hierarchy, be authentic to yourself, and then you'll be able to find organizations based on the impact you've made that you're the right fit for to carry on being successful in that style. Because I do want to move on to some of those other areas now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, when you talk about the people leadership side of things, if you're talking specifically about HR, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think you're quite right in that regard. I think that there has been, so for example, we've got 3 or 4 HRD positions at the moment that we're recruiting for, which are over 150K. And it literally, if you look through the shortlist for these types of roles that we had 3 years ago to the shortlist that we have now, it's very difficult to get people out of those positions at the moment. And a lot of that is because when you do get kind of really good CEOs, MDs, or HRDs specifically within those functions, it's almost like they've developed this affinity or this kind of loyalty to the business in terms of saying, I want to see this through. I want to get everybody back open again. I want to take care of everybody. And actually, when I hear that, I think, my God, that's a great committed person who's actually really assigned to their business. Doesn't help me find somebody for my client necessarily, but it does kind of like, when somebody comes, it's harder to get them kind of like away than it's no bad thing at the moment. And I think that's something that we're seeing more and more.
So true. It's amazing, actually, the rise of the sort of cultural leader and the good CEOs and MDs. You're spot on. They're actually recognizing and holding on to those people that are there to ride shotgun with them in delivering the business plan through culture and alignment. You mentioned marketing earlier. Let's just talk a bit about that. Did I misunderstand, or are you finding the need to actually bring great people from marketing in outside of the industry because some of those skills have disappeared or just were not developed, or are there great talent within the industry still that you're able to fill the positions that are opening up?
I think this is two things. So one, so we've always, so specifically for marketing, finance, and technology, we normally look at people from outside of hospitality to come into hospitality. And there's multiple reasons for that. I think that, maybe kind of like some of the larger operators within hospitality haven't been as advanced. I think hospitality is a slightly different market, and maybe kind of like they've not been as progressive as other sectors have kind of been. And now they need to kind of like import that skill set. And difficulty being that there still is so much hospitality bashing that is happening within the media. So when we do approach somebody who's working for a retail group or a leisure company or something like that and say, oh, do you want to come and work for this amazing company in the hospitality sector? The trepidation isn't so much about the actual business itself. The trepidation is about the sector and the health of the sector and the long-term health of the sector as well. And that's something that I think will diminish over time. I think hopefully by next spring, summertime, I think that the narrative will change and things will become more positive. And the trend that we're kind of expecting to happen is that everybody is going to be about experience again. So they're going to want to get out of their houses and they're going to want to go and do things. And whether that's eating in restaurants, going to play ping pong, going to Laser Quest, or going to jump in an adult ball pool or whatever it is that they want to do. There's all of these different things that they are going to want to get out there and go and do, but they're going to decide what they're going to do before they leave the house. And that's where the bun fight's kind of happening, because it's about people wanting to have those experiences, but they're booking them based upon recommendations of others, social media, Instagram, all of that kind of side of things. And that's where the bun fight kind of comes.
So it actually sounds like there's an amazing opportunity for ambitious people that are within the hospitality sector, because actually they know that it's been tough, but now is the best time to be in the sector or to join the sector. If it's going to take 6 months to a year for outsiders to sort of regain their confidence to come join the sector, maybe that means there's a window of time right now for ambitious internal folks to step up into roles that perhaps otherwise, in prior times, they might have been outcompeted by somebody that's coming.
I think there's definitely a part of that. We, as part of Core, we do a lot of non-exec recruitment as well. And one of the areas that we've specifically seen kind of like quite a big growth area is in the recruitment of non-execs who have either got finance or marketing backgrounds. We think technology is going to come along this line as well. And this might be where you might be kind of like a, 30, 40 million pound organization, and you've got a really good kind of like head of marketing or head marketing director who maybe is sitting around about the kind of 80 to the 100 kind of K mark. But then that person might need input from another individual who maybe sits within a different sector or has a different skill set or something like that. And that's where we might place a non-exec to come in and do maybe kind of like a day and a half a month with that individual to actually kind of say, right, how do I challenge you? How do I move this forward? How do I develop you? And I think that that's something that those individuals, as in those heads of marketing, have to be more brazen about when they're actually doing their performance reviews and when they're going to their senior leadership to say, look, there's all of this stuff that I want to do, but I don't know how to do it, or I don't know how to get to that point. Can I have some support? Can I have some guidance? Can I have some mentorship in order to get themselves up to that next level? Because I think if you're already you're absolutely right. If you're already working within those hospitality businesses, you've been loyal and you're looking to be developed, then I think people need to be more vocal about that in terms of saying, look, the world has changed and I want to update my skill set. Can I have access to kind of some of these people? I think that's a great thing to do.
That's super interesting. I mean, in my world, we were a tech startup, we're now a tech scale up. It's completely normal to seek investors that have that sort of NED type profile so that they can teach you what you don't know. I mean, founding CEOs by definition will usually have not done it before. And the race is to learn what you don't know before you run out of money. And so that you can then go to the next level. I hadn't appreciated that was a trend that was now flowing through hospitality, and the brightest aspiring people should be demanding access to those folks to fill their skill gaps in a way that's perhaps not as accepted.
Yeah, but I mean the new thing, for example, in the finance side of thing is obviously everybody wants to IPO. Like, you know, it's like literally like you know, everybody wants to IPO. It's so bizarre. But the numbers of people that have actually done it before, specifically within hospitality, are absolutely minute. And now it's like, I mean, we've got 3 positions on at the moment where we are looking for non-exec finance CFOs who can come in and help companies structure for IPOs over the next kind of like 3 years. And that's a great thing, you know, I mean, but I don't think that, I think it's great that they're taking non-execs rather than just trying to recruit new CFOs. They're actually saying, I've got a great CFO, but now I need to find somebody who's done this before. And that's something which can kind of link over. We just placed one in the last couple of weeks, and he's going to go in and do an amazing job for the retail business that he's going to go and work with. And we'll probably do multiple of them.
That's fascinating. So what does the modern visionary post-COVID finance person look like? Krishnan, tell me, are they suddenly enlightened?
I think having a very strong link to operations, I think, is kind of a big thing. I think financial modeling is a massive thing, even if they're modeling, throwing it away. If they're supplying that kind of management information, I think that's something which is going to happen. I think that a lot of the time it's about analysis, and that's one thing that we're seeing more and more. So is this insight about your customer and your sales figures and your numbers, and a lot of that is like, it's almost this tie between kind of like marketing and finance in terms of that customer insight piece, which has to come in, and getting that reporting kind of thing right as well. And I think increasingly we're seeing technology sitting under finance as well, and getting kind of like really good CFOs taking ownership of tech as well as finance, I think, is the other thing, because it's all about reporting. It's all about being able to turn that information around as quickly as possible. Supply chain, I mean, I'm not even going into supply chain today because it's an absolute nightmare, and there's so few of these people. But yeah, on the finance side of things, I think that's what we're looking for. I think also kind of like historically, we've had kind of like, you know, when we're taking briefs for kind of like FDs and CFOs, it's normally kind of like, we want top 4 experience. We want someone who's done this. We want someone who's done that. We want someone who's done the next thing. And now clients are much more kind of like open to maybe looking at people from different types of backgrounds. And I think that's a great thing, because it opens up the spectrum a little bit more for kind of like other people. And as opposed to just having the same pool of 100 candidates that you're kind of using for everything, you can really open that up now and kind of like look at people outside of that also. I think also the last bit that I'd kind of say, both in the finance and the marketing side of things, is that we're now seeing it at CFO and CMO level, and sometimes even at marketing director and finance director level, that these guys are getting tied into their long-term equity schemes the same way that kind of like an MD or a CEO would be tied into a long-term equity scheme as well. And that's something which has been really interesting, but it also shortens the availability of these candidates, because if you do tie somebody in on a 5-year deal, 99% of the time they're going to end up staying for that payout at the end if they're already invested in it. So again, it kind of creates less people that are available in that market. And in the list that we're kind of going through, we know when those things are coming up and when people might come available again. And it's quite rare that they leave within that period of time. So again, from a market perspective, that's something that we've seen, especially coming up post-pandemic, which hasn't really been in place before.
Again, it's just this recurring theme, isn't it? Amazing opportunities for great people that, you know, take the chance presented to them. You've talked a lot about these evolving leadership teams, even just there talking about sort of, you know, equitizing some of the roles that perhaps traditionally may have sat outside that pool. One of the things I thought was really interesting in your article was the sort of throwaway paragraph almost at the end around psychometrics, because that seems to me that sort of ties in really nicely to this idea of building your sort of team of cross-functional Avengers to come on and take the market post-COVID. Can you just share a bit with us about what's happening in psychometrics in hospitality and beyond?
I think a lot of people, I mean, just this is my personal opinion, and to me, psychometrics should be less than 10% of the interview process. And it should probably be something which is done at the end of the interview process, which is around getting to know the individual better from a work style perspective. And also making sure that kind of like, you know, ongoing, you put them with the right teams or in the right areas and all of that kind of side of things as well. And I think that there just was, I think it I think the pendulum swung too far the other way with psychometrics within certain organizations for quite some time. I mean, there's one organization that we work with, and they will not interview somebody until they've done a psychometric test. So if you can imagine our interview process in terms of finding this, taking this brief, going off, finding this person, telling them about this amazing opportunity, getting them involved, getting them really excited, and then saying, oh, by the way, there's this kind of computer screen that we really want you to spend an hour with before you get to talk to a person. Doesn't feel good to me. And I think that turns off a lot of candidates. And I think also I think that people are about people and they're about the people that they work with. And I think also when you're getting them to jump through these hoops in terms of when they're going for a job, a lot of the people we represent are not active job seekers, they're passive job seekers. So they're all about being taken out for dinner, being told about the opportunity. And yes, there comes a point when they go from being a passive job seeker to actually, I'm really interested in this opportunity and I'm serious about it, and that's important. But I think putting a psychometric blocker in there can sometimes create a slightly wrong impression for people as well. It's very much at a couple of different levels here. So I mean, some people use it at base level, some people use very sophisticated psychometrics at senior level, and we advise absolutely for it to be 10% of the recruitment process in anything that they do.
And are the companies you work with listening and accepting that whilst it might be a useful tool, it should be ideally weighted towards the end and then percentage weighted down so that you have the opportunity just to use it as a marker of perhaps where you need to focus your attention on ensuring, complementary working styles and things rather than just vetoing people at the beginning? Or are they nodding and then still insisting that you do it up front?
I feel like you're asking about my influence and skills right now, which isn't such a good thing. So obviously they're all listening to me clearly, but I think sometimes it's you can only advise so much. And the thing is when you do have an upfront conversation with your client to say, look, I've got this amazing X person, can we just not do the psychometric testing at this phase? 99% of the time they're going to get you, they're going to listen to you, and it's going to be fine. But I think it's about, different company. I can understand, especially for large corporate organizations, that they want to have consistency. But I think where you are trying to attract top talent, you're trying to bring in different types of people, I think you need to be a wee bit flexible around that.
No, I think you're spot on. We've started doing some helping some customers with some psychometric profiling around digital influence, because actually our data tells us that you can be spectacularly effective at aligning and inspiring your people across the organization through digital influence using a whole range of different techniques. So some people can show as digital introverts versus digital extroverts, like doing video trading updates, for example. You can actually be equally influential with either personality type. You just need to understand what your type is or your team's types are, and then organize yourself and discipline yourselves to make sure that you sort of cover all the bases between you. So it's just about understanding. It doesn't, all sorts of different types of people and teams can be successful together as long as they're cognizant of where their strengths and weaknesses are. So I'm totally singing from the same hymn sheet. Totally different article, but we've got a few minutes, and so I can't let you escape without talking about it. Sponsorship. I understand just one or two people have been mentioning there might be a chef and other recruitment crisis. So can you just share some thoughts on what's going on there and what your recommendations are around sponsorship?
So sponsorship, something that, so we, as well as having I think most people that will be watching this would probably know is mostly for the work that we do in the UK, and we've got London and Bristol, but we also have offices in Vancouver, Cape Town, Amsterdam, France, and then consultant based out in Dubai. We're actually opening on Monday in Auckland as well. So we've got access to all of these candidates across the world. And what we do with a lot of these markets is that we, in the Middle East, where sponsorship is the way that you get your people, is that we take people from South Africa and Africa or the UK or Europe or the States or Canada or wherever, and we relocate them to the Middle East. So we've been doing this for years and years and years. And since and a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that the government has changed a lot of the criteria for sponsorship in December last year. So now you can get access to more lower level chefs. As long as they earn over a certain amount of money, you can get access to technology people. You can get access to lots of different people, but it now presents this whole challenge around A, do you have your sponsorship license? B, what's your interview process going to be? Are you going to fly these people over? Have you got accommodation for these people? Do these people need accommodation? What timescale are you looking at to bring these people on board? So we're putting together so we're doing a webinar tomorrow and the recording of which will be kind of like all over our feeds and all of that kind of stuff, with a sponsorship agency to actually answer and go through all of these questions. And then we're also putting together fact sheets for our clients and also for our candidates as well. The market that we're starting off with is South Africa, because we have an office in Cape Town. And in the Cape Town office, I mean, they report back that unemployment rates in South Africa are now 53%, which is just insane. And there's so many talented chefs who are looking at kind of like relocation to the UK from South Africa at the moment. And we've got a database of like 8,000 of them in South Africa. So we're basically trying to move as many of those people over to the UK on sponsorship as we possibly can. But we sent out a piece of e-marketing to our client database in London last week, and I think it was around about 130 chef vacancies that came in on the back of it. So you can see that there is this kind of like supply and demand thing, which is going to start kicking off kind of like really soon. But I think that increasingly employers are going to have to look at how they're going to find these people. I think it's fairly apparent now that the swathes of people that were due to come back from Europe aren't coming back or haven't come back yet. And I don't think people want to kind of like hang around and rely on that. So I think they need to start kind of like looking at what their other options should be. And this is a really valuable way of doing that.
Good for you. It's good. Again, it's just this recurring theme, right? Amazing opportunities for people in all sorts of places, all sorts of disciplines. I believe 2022 is going to be a good time to be in hospitality, and I'm sure you're going to be helping a whole bunch of people across all the areas we've been talking about realize their dreams, Krishnan. So thank you so much for making the time to do this, and keep up the good fight, huh?
Excellent, Rob. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure.